Yo, truth had me up against the ropes, semi-conscious without no boxing skill.
Peace, power, and love. This is the People's University Mathematics Session 1. I know everybody, so we're going to get off into mathematics today. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the program, but basically we go off of the baseline essays, which is something that was written in 1987 by a group of scholars who eventually became the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, or ASCAC. Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, who died in 2007, was a primary consultant for these essays, and 6 of them that go through mathematics, social studies, science, language arts, art, music, and that's it, right? 6 essays. And these essays are designed to teach to teachers to form a curriculum. It was actually implemented in the Portland Public School District's curriculum, and it still is being implemented to this day. We have the 1990 revision of the baseline essays, and this is what we draw. This is the source that we're drawing from. We just started the People's University. We had a different curriculum before. It was based off of our own scholarship, which is obviously far less, it's inferior to our scholars. So when we came across the baseline essays from Brother Shabaka, we said, well, we got to use these. So we started with these. Last week we introduced the essays and pretty much what I just told you in terms of like the authors, who all the authors are, where it came from, and all of that. So everybody's familiar with what the baseline essays are. You can find that on the website, lookitupmovement.com. Go on People's University Concept, and it'll give you the whole thing in terms of what the baseline essays are. So we're starting now with the math essay. Today is the first day of the math. All right. Okay. Some of us are really wanting to get into the application of the math. Our forefathers left us all of this for a reason. I know we're excited, especially Raya, about getting into the actual application of the math, but they wrote this for a reason, man, and I want to make sure we deliver it, to the people. So we're only going to get through about the introduction of the mathematics, and it deals heavily with, obviously, as you can see on the board, history. So be patient in terms of the application. The Ahmose Papyrus is something that we're actually going to mention today. The Ahmose Papyrus, if anybody wants to look it up early on, what we're going to be studying specifically is the Ahmose Papyrus. What I think we'll do is we'll reintroduce basic systems of mathematics like multiplication, addition, division, fractions and decimals from the ancient Kemetic standpoint. And this will help anybody who is not familiar with fractions to get refreshed, like myself, and then, or decimals and multiplication and all of that. And then it helps to increase your logic, because math is based off of logic. So hopefully, my hopes is that when we begin to break down this Ahmose Papyrus, kids that come in here from public schools are going to be able to go into regular school and see how they're breaking down their mathematics and go, well, this is way easy now, because this system would correspond with our minds, the way that we operate. So this system of teaching math, I think, will correspond better. So for those that get refreshers and the kids, it'll be good. But we definitely want to make sure that we cover all the areas that the Honorable Miss Beatrice Lumpkin, who was the author of this particular essay, she left behind for us. So we're going to cover every nook and cranny before we get to it. Okay, so that's what today is. Basically going to be the history of mathematics from our standpoint. With that, I'm going to give you the introduction written by, again, Miss Beatrice Lumpkin for the mathematic baseline essay. She writes, "The African contribution to mathematics is fundamental, extensive, and relatively unknown in our nation's schools. In this essay, we will provide student-oriented materials that can be introduced in mathematics classes of different levels. But first, a few words are in order to understand why this material is so little known. The great African-American scholar, W.E.B. Du Bois, gave us an insightful explanation of the omission and distortion of the African contribution to civilization. He said, the rise and support of capitalism called for rationalization based upon degrading the Negro peoples. It is especially significant that the science of Egyptology arose and flourished at the very time that the Cotton Kingdom reached its greatest power on the foundation of American Negro slavery. So, W. Du Bois is saying here, capitalism is what he's blaming for the decline of the inclusion of African contributions to history in general. Western historians first became aware of the great civilizations of Egypt at a time when the memory of slavery was still fresh and governments of Europe were carving up the body of Africa. Archaeologists could not deny the visible greatness of the African civilization that they were excavating in the Nile Valley. Nor could the historians admit that black people had built this great civilization, because to do so would contradict the theories of racial inferiority used as a cover for slavery and colonialism. So they invented the theory of white Egyptians who merely got browned by the sun. So that's her introduction. Now the next section is entitled Bias in the Teaching of History of Mathematics, and this is where we got to break it down. Ms. Beatrice Lumpkin starts with, some have avoided the question of the African foundations of mathematics by starting the history of mathematics in Greece, 580 BC, almost 2,000 years after the beginning of written Egyptian mathematics. Everything that came before was discarded as not true mathematics because formal deductive proofs had not been used. However, this essay will show that what is discarded by omitting the Egyptian experience is the main body of elementary and high school mathematics. Now, a couple points. This is mathematics, so we're going to do some quick application. If history places written mathematics, question number 1 on the quiz. This is question number 1 on the quiz. We also formulate, because that's what they wanted us to do, is formulate a curriculum. So we actually formulate the quizzes while we're here too. So question number 1 on the quiz. If history places written mathematics beginning in Greece in 580 BC, and mystery places written mathematics 2,000 years before, in what year did written mathematics begin according to mystery? Greece.
580 BC. Right?
580 BC.
And this said, what was it, 2,000?
2,000 years before.
Before BC.
2,000 years before the date, 580 BC.
Do I have to?
Is that division?
No, 2,500.
It's subtraction.
2,500 BC.
No.
You said
Oh,
580.
you said
Division.
2,000 years before 580 BC?
Well,
Yeah.
there's
Is it 580 or 500?
580.
580 BC.
That's what it is.
Let's
Addition.
see, 2,000
So
years
that's
before
1410?
No, it's addition.
It's addition?
Yeah.
2,580 BC. Oh,
2580 BC. Ms. Beatrice Lumpkin stated that they have distorted the math history by placing the beginning of math at 580 BC. Okay? 2,000 years after the beginning of written mathematics in Egypt. Now, that's the end of her paragraph. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to break down exactly the period that she's talking about, because she's dealing with a wealth of information when she says that. So the date is now 2,580 years before the birth of Christ, or 2,580 years before the Common Era. 2580 BC is where we are. Okay, now I created this timeline basically to give you the contrast. Remember, the title of this particular session is The Bias in the Teaching of the History of Mathematics. So first you got to know history versus mystery. And mystery is basically, his story versus my story. We say mystery. Okay? You got to know history versus mystery in order to see. They start by the Christian calculation. They start creation at 5,509 years to 3,905